You are listening to Nerd Best Friends, a podcast that covers the nerdy conversations you're already having, or wish you could. It's the nerdiest thing you'll do this week.
This is Analese.
This is Rob.
And we are your nerd best friends.
We're going to Hell's Kitchen and getting nerdy over Daredevil. This is Nerd Best Friends, where we celebrate the nerdy conversations you're already having or wish you were. We're your nerdy companions on a quest through cosplay, comics, D&D, pop culture, chaos, and all things wonderfully weird. If you're loving the ride, hit subscribe, follow, or share this episode with your fellow nerds, because the algorithm needs a little nudge from the nerd herd. Let's make Season 5 our nerdiest adventure yet.
This is episode 78. It's our comic book episode of the season, Rob. We went with Daredevil. We're going to get into it in a minute, but in the meantime, how you doing, best friend?
I've been doing very well. It's, as always, it's very busy around here. There's lots of different things to do, but there's always time for your nerdy hobbies, is what I have found.
Is it life without your nerdy hobbies? I want to say I'm really appreciating, I hope our fans are too, and our listeners, but I'm really appreciating our weekly episodes. I think it's been really fun to spend more time with my nerd best friend, nerding out about things, and just gives us a reason to sit and talk, and I've been really enjoying it.
The nerdy hobbies are the things like you have to look forward to something when life gets busy with, work and drama and all kinds of stuff. Like you got to know but I'm playing D&D on Wednesday. Well, but I'm recording a podcast on Sunday. Well, but the new Daredevil comic book is coming out on Tuesday. Like whatever it is, it's good to have things to look forward to.
Absolutely. And we're climbing towards official episode 100. It's going to be really exciting this season. It's been so cool. And in this case, every year we highlight a superhero, comic book character. We did season 1, we did Batman. Season 2, we did Superman. Season 3, Miss Marvel?
I thought it was Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, you're right. We did Spider-Man. And then season 4, I think, was Miss Marvel. Captain Marvel.
Yes, both the same.
It was our first, although Captain Marvel started as Marvel, right? It started as a male character, turned into a female character, is what I remember.
Yeah, but only for the purposes of dying and giving the mantle.
Right, yes. And now we're talking about Daredevil. And so this, we're gonna get into it, but this is a total new one for me, and I can't wait to tell you how ridiculously idiotic I am about my knowledge about Daredevil. But I
had a great time with Daredevil. We put together a reading list for you and for Joan, and we'll probably, I'm sure Joan will put it in the notes because she's super good like that.
Yes.
So I was flipping through all of these books. I even went back and watched the director's cut of the Benjamin Affleck movie starring Jennifer Garner just last night. Had a great time with it. I forgot how much I really like Daredevil.
That was a really popular movie at the time, and it's going to allude to how much of an idiot I am about Daredevil. But before we get to any of that, we got some nerd mail.
Nerd mail!
Hey, Rob, I think you have nerd mail for us today.
I had a question from a listener. Listener Ed wrote in and said, do you think they will introduce Batman into the new James Gunn DC universe that's starting to tie things together from the Superman movie? They've got the Peacemaker show on HBO, which we know ties in because, spoiler alert, Peacemaker has a cameo in the Superman movie. And now, what's-his-face, Nathan Fillion character, Green Lantern character, is getting a spin-off show on HBO. And so there's this connected...
No idea.
We talked about it during the episode. Yeah.
Okay, I forgot.
Anyway, yeah. Douchey space cop Nathan Fillion is at it again in Green Lantern.
Maybe I do remember that. Okay, yeah, now you reminded me. Yes. Okay.
So the question was, do you think Batman will come to this universe? And should Batman come to this universe?
Oh, that's a good question, listener Ed. My instinct almost says no.
That was my first reaction too. I'm like, no.
Yeah?
Don't need him.
Yeah, unless they go to an Avengers level kind of thing through all the DC characters, but I don't know if that's the route James Gunn wants to go.
I mean, yes and no, right? Like, that also kind of brings up that question of, like, does Batman belong in the Justice League? Because surely in the movie, like, they've got the Justice League headquarters, and it was very, very obviously very empty during this first movie with only like 4 people hanging out in this gigantic building. So I think the idea there is like, oh, next time we see it, it's going to be teaming with superheroes. But Batman's not a superhero. He's
a vigilante. Yeah, you're right.
Batman's in the Super Friends. Batman's in the Justice League because he's Batman and Batman sells books. I don't know that if you're going to do it right, does Batman just steal a bunch of screen time from other, like, more obscure, cool characters that we could be learning about?
Where my brain's going, I mean, that's a good point. And where my brain's going is that you look at the tone of this new Superman film, and it's very much filled with humanity and hope and really just trying to do good. And I know at its core, Batman is not humanity and hope. He's a vigilante using his whatever's at his disposal, whether riches or technology, to extract vengeance and get rid of bad guys because of the death of his parents, going after the bad guys because of all that. I don't see it fitting in the tone that James Gunn has started with, unless he starts to make it dark, which could be a mistake, right?
Is this an opportunity for us to get a lighter Batman? Is this an opportunity to have a Batman with a gray and blue suit and not an all black suit? Is this an opportunity for a Batman that smiles?
Is the world's greatest detective instead of the mopiest mopey mope guy?
Maybe so, right? Maybe he's detecting and he's got his gadgets and he can, and they see the world in very different ways, but him and Superman can be friends, kind of like World's Finest, where it's always Superman, Batman team ups. Maybe, but I'd skip it.
Yeah,
I'd skip it. Like,
maybe a cameo. Maybe he exists, but isn't like front and center. Like Superman and those guys become aware of him, but he's kind of just tangentially there. Because they're making another film with Robert Pattinson, aren't they?
Sure, of course they are.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't think he's running that arc of they usually do Batman in 3s, right? I don't think he's involved in that arc, and if he is, then that kind of tells you where they're going with it. But I think
it could be separate. Yeah, you're right. If they're going to keep the Robert Pattinson movies going, that's very dark and dramatic and mopey. So
gritty and
sad.
Yeah.
Sad man. Yeah. So if they keep that, then just keep it separate. And that could be like, oh man, Gotham City sure is a pile of sad. We'll just leave that over there.
We know it exists, but unless Batman calls for help.
Right. And if he does, they're probably not going to send Superman, right? They're going to send freaking Metamorpho or somebody.
Right.
They'll send a Green Lantern. Batman and Nathan Fillion Green Lantern.
Dude, Nathan Fillion and Robert Pattinson. Yeah, that could be a cool matchup to kind of, again, maybe tangentially. But no, I don't see how Batman fits in what James Gunn is building. So I say no.
I think, going back to our conversation upcoming, it's the same as Daredevil. Daredevil doesn't belong in the Avengers. Daredevil belongs in Hell's Kitchen, beating up crime lords. They can both exist separately. We don't have to tie everybody into everything just to be oh, look, there's that guy.
Yeah. We don't have to follow the MCU footprint on this, right? And start just bringing in all the characters. It can just exist knowing that the others are around.
Right. And even so, that's how they did it with all of the Netflix shows and the Disney Plus kind of stuff. It's like, we're not, this just exists over here. We make it clear through expository dialogue that it's all a shared universe, but really we're never going to see Iron Man on the Luke Cage show. That's silly.
Right. I mean, great question, listener Ed. I'm a no. Rob, it sounds like you're a no as well. It's not necessarily needed in what's being built by James Gunn. Listeners, tell us what you think. Write us, podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. Find us on social medias. Really just tell us what you think. Batman in the new James Gunn DCU, yay or nay? And now let's talk about Daredevil. So
Daredevil.
Yeah, Daredevil. I knew nothing about Daredevil going into this, other than the fact that there was a very popular movie with Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner.
Yes.
For some reason, I remember it being a TV show, but I think I'm just confusing Alias with Daredevil because Jennifer Garner
that was prime
starred in Alias.
Jennifer Gardner, her moment.
Right. She was every superhero at the time, right?
Yeah.
And I know there's a current show. And I haven't seen any of it until I started reading the first comic you suggested. I thought Daredevil was a female superhero.
You thought Daredevil was Elektra?
I always thought that Jennifer Garner was Daredevil.
But she had 2 Elektra movies that spun out of that.
This is me having not seen any of them, having not paid attention to any of it, only knowing that she was the poster child for those movies. I assumed she was Daredevil. This whole time I'm like, oh good, we're doing another female superhero. I'm so excited.
My God. Daredevil's been around forever. Daredevil was created by Stan Lee in the 60s.
Yeah, but Stan Lee was someone who, also started to create female superhero characters.
Did you not have seen like a comic book with Daredevil on it?
Nope. If I did, it didn't. It didn't
probably had Elektra on the cover.
Probably, right? Like, so I'm reading the first one you recommended from the 80s. The one
Frank Miller, The Man Without Fear.
Yes. So I'm reading this one. I'm like, all right, when are we going to stop talking about this dude? He's in college now, and now he's a lawyer. Like, when are we going to actually get to and then it didn't make sense because there were some slides from his childhood where the kids were chanting Daredevil at him. I'm like, maybe he gives the name to her when he meets her. Like, I'm such an idiot. So I learned a lot in reading these comics.
Oh my gosh.
I am so not in the superhero world.
What
when it comes
podcast
to
am I on?
This is your nerd best friend admitting to the world right now that I am definitely not the comic book my comic books all were in the horror genre, which is really going to lend to our next episode a lot better, our next 2 episodes a lot better, actually. But no idea. I was waiting for the Jennifer Garner character to be like, okay. And then, yeah. It was quite a revelation for me. So now that I admitted how much of an idiot I am.
So we're starting from scratch.
We're starting from scratch. Daredevil is a dude.
Daredevil was a young man. His mother died of some kind of, we don't really know. Maybe it's explored at some place, but it doesn't really matter. But when Matt Murdock was a young man, he was growing up with his single father who was a boxer. Jack the Devil Murdock, they called him in the ring and all this kind of stuff. And so being, a New York boxer, just kind of a mook, kind of a thug, he fell in with the rampant organized crime. Apparently, Hell's Kitchen, New York is the most corrupt place on the face of the planet. And, he became an enforcer for the mob to make ends meet and, or due to being threatened, etc. And he always told his son, Matt, don't be a big bully like me. Don't be a fighter. Don't solve your problems with your fists. You got to learn. You got to be a doctor or a lawyer. You got to study, blah, 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 blah. He wanted something better for his son. And then the mob comes and they tell him, all right, buddy, like you've been winning fights. We've set you up. Now we're going to make a big payoff. You got to throw a fight. You got to go down in the 4th round. Or whatever. And he portrayed great in all of the comic book origins and really well in the Benjamin Affleck movie. He talks to his son. He said, he's like, after the accident, oh wait, I went too far.
In the middle of that
is the accident with the radioactive ooze that gives Daredevil his powers. So in the comic books, he's running across the street in the comic books, he sees a blind, this is the
juxtaposition.
The irony of it all is there's a blind man crossing the street and a tanker truck or a truck full of radioactive waste barrels comes, speeding through the street, and Matt Murdock jumps in front of the truck to rescue the blind man crossing the street. There's an accident. The radioactive ooze splashes all over his face and in his eyes. It burns out his eyeballs and starts coursing through his veins, and all of his other senses are heightened. His sense of touch, his sense of hearing. It even gives him this like magical echolocation type eventually as he learns how to use it.
Well, he hones into that, right? Like it doesn't, I read that it doesn't give him that. The character Stick hones all the other senses to where he then eventually can have that extra sense of like location tracking almost.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so that's an interesting thing. So most origins will have, some origins just have him like, well, he would still sneak down to his dad's gym. And even though he was blind, he kind of like would punch the bag and like do the balance beams. And that was kind of how he developed himself. But in other origins, there's Stick. And Stick is another blind person who is trained as a ninja. Like there's a lot of ninja stuff going on in Daredevil that depending on the adaptation you're getting, you may or may not get ninja stuff.
So Stick isn't a common character. Stick is only around in some iterations of Daredevil.
Stick, I don't know if it's almost always stick or if it's almost always not stick. Like I don't like I've seen it both ways.
Okay.
I don't know which one is like, but
Which
I'm pretty
one is
sure
the
stick
more-
is
okay.
continuity Daredevil because of all the ninja crap that's thrown in there all the time.
Got it.
But now this is one of my favorite things about Daredevil, which is kind of a tangential Daredevil. At the scene of that accident, when the toxic ooze splashed into Matt Murdock's eyes, there were 2 kids on that street corner. The other kid was holding a glass bowl with 4 little pet turtles in it. And when that accident happened, he dropped the glass bowl. It shattered, and the little turtles with the ooze spilled down into the sewers.
Wow.
That is the origin of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Wow.
If you read...
How did they get Splinter? Would there just happen to be a rat in the sewer too?
Right, because remember, Splinter was the pet of the master Oroko Saki or whatever, and he
That's
escaped.
right. Okay.
And then he found the turtles and gathered them all up, and he got splashed in the ooze as well.
Wow.
So in the Eastman and Laird Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic book, that's how they draw it. They draw it like from the perspective of like a little kid is standing there with his turtles and some other kid like pushes a blind man out of the way of a truck and there's an accident, and like that's how it happens.
Wow.
As their like send up of Marvel Comics, right? Because they were independent creators. And so that was kind of a little like tongue in cheek moment of like, oh, well, that's how our characters were created too, kind of thing. It was
no
magic
idea.
or radioactive ooze or whatever.
No idea.
But it also shows those creators their love of Daredevil too, because one, that's how they put their origin in. And then in Daredevil, of course, there's all the ninja stuff. Everything's like the hand and the magic ninjas of the hand and the hand. And that's why in Ninja Turtles, the ninjas are the Foot Clan.
Ha. Look at that. Look at that cross reference brought to you by Rob.
So that's one of my
Amazing.
favorite parts about Daredevil is it's actually
That's kind of cool.
that I like the Teenage
I had
Mutant
no
Ninja
idea.
Turtles.
No idea, because I don't think I've read any Ninja Turtle comics either. Any. Period. Ever.
They're a lot of fun. But again, if you've seen the different adaptations and stuff, they do a good job of telling it.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's a great reference.
Isn't that fun? One of the most fun things about Daredevils is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So he starts developing these powers either on his own or by the ninja training of Stick secretly. And after his accident, and his father and him make a pact to never give up. And so there's Jack the Devil Murdock in the ring. He's supposed to take a dive, but he promised Matt he would never give up. And he gets up and he beats the tar out of that guy. He wins the match, and for a brief moment, father and son are triumphant over the evils of the world. After the match, they take him out to an alley. The mobsters who lost all their money betting against him take him out in the alley and murder him. And this is, kind of that Batman origin for Daredevil of now, he had been focused on the law, but some things are just outside of the law. Some things the law just can't keep up with. And that's why he has to fight crime and injustice in the courtroom and in the streets.
I thought it was really interesting that they have him go to college, and that's where he meets... Is it Froggy or Foggy? I always forget. Foggy. He meets Foggy in college and then becomes a lawyer. You don't see that often in superhero. It's kind of like we talked about Superman earlier. Clark Kent. He has this career, but it's not. I've never seen a Superman origin story where he just dreams of being a reporter, right? Like he goes and gets a job of something he can do to live by day as a normal person, and then have his alter ego Superman.
Superman, like Jesus, exists as an infant and then as a 33-year-old man. There's nothing in between. You just have to have this assumption.
We get in between in this career that is also, like the superhero, is based off of this tragedy and wanting to have this vengeance for justice.
Yes.
It's really interesting that he has a whole career based around it, as well as his superhero traits based around it.
And I think that makes him more, I think that gives the character more dimensions. I think there's definitely something to be said for like a lot of your favorite Batman stories will be the ones where Batman's being a detective. A lot of the really good Superman stories are the ones where, Clark Kent and Lois Lane are actually being investigative reporters and going places and digging up clues and learning things. Same thing with Daredevil. The best Daredevil stories are the ones where they're juxtaposing and like they're telling an A story and a B story, one in the courtroom and one in the street.
That's a little bit like Dexter too. I want to say, I know we're not talking about the horror genre, but he has his passion for blood turns into this whole career of being a blood spatter analyst for the police. And often those episodes, he's working on a case about something while he's also
murdering.
He's been trained to use his murderous desire to go after people who got away with their crimes. So he uses his science analyst brain to go after people, and he has this whole code of having to prove that that person actually did the things. And once he proves it, gives him the permission to then murder. For me, it was kind of the same. I just saw some parallels between the career chosen also with the other part of them. In this case, for Dexter being a murderer or serial killer, but in the case of Daredevil being almost a vigilante, not quite a... I mean, would you call him a superhero just because of the radioactive blindness?
He does have superhero powers, yes. I think he's a superhero.
Okay.
Because...
Okay.
I think you have to lean into that. You have to lean into like the idea of like that radiation, that radioactive ooze gave him all kinds of superpowers, including like he's got to be strong. He's got to have like extra crazy muscles and tendons to be able to be jumping and flipping around rooftops and all that kind of stuff. Like I think there's a lot going on there with superpowers for him. Yeah.
Okay. We have a few questions to kind of go through, and generated these just because of my lack of knowledge. So I'm just going to kind of go through them in chat now that we have an overview of Daredevil and basic origin premises. The first question, which I thought was really interesting too, and it makes sense to the time that the original Daredevil was created by Stan Lee, that he's this center to his character is Catholicism.
Yes.
It's very interesting because you don't see that ever either.
Right. I mean, there's definitely a lot of probably practical reasons to keep religion out of your superhero stories. You know, who knows like what mood the world big picture is in when it comes to religion and your books. But also it's also like interesting to be like, oh, well, what does religion look like in a universe where there's, you know, magic and Asgardian gods and like things in your stories, right?
What year do you remember off the top of your head what year Stan Lee created Daredevil?
Oh gosh, 60 something.
Because okay, so around that time, the big deal was that United States elected a Catholic to be president.
1964. 1964. Nailed it, Analese.
I mean, it was in society that was such a big deal that he was Catholic.
You're right.
When he was elected president, that was the other thing that was in my head as I was reading it, just going like, this has to be around JFK because that would have been in the zeitgeist of social commentary at the time. But that does lead us to this first question of, is Daredevil blind Batman, Catholic Spider-Man, or something totally his own?
I don't think he's very Spider-Man-y. I mean, yes, he kind of like flips around rooftops and stuff, but I don't know that the Spider-Man comparison is very comparable. Spider-Man is very much about his family, his joking around, his like, oh, the Parker luck got me again. He's that wisecracking, you know, fun superhero, but then also like he's relatable to the reader because he has real world problems of like poverty, where both Batman and Daredevil are on a quest. They're like singularly focused and like over the top obsessed with cleaning up the streets and making people pay for their evil doing. Like they're just different than a Superman is. So I would say he's for sure more like Batman, even to the point where like, you know, Batman has this guilt of not being able to save his parents because he was a little kid. So everything he does, he's got to get bigger and stronger and clean up these streets. Daredevil has the proverbial Catholic guilt where everything he does is, you know, on one side of the law or the other, and he's got to feel bad about all of it. So yeah, I'm going to lean more towards Batman. There's a great scene if you ever watch the Benjamin Affleck and Jennifer Garner movie again, definitely watch the director's cut. I don't even remember what the original cut is, but it's like 30 something minutes shorter. And I think the plot resolution all resolves around Coolio. In the director's cut, Coolio's still in it, but like they actually, you know, have interactions with some of the mob people and they have to like find the clues and figure it out themselves. I don't know. It gives Foggy like a reason to be there, right? Like Foggy at some point is like, hey, we still have this kid, you know, Daredevil's out chasing Elektra and doing his Daredevil stuff. And Foggy's like, we still got Coolio. He's going to go to the chair if we don't figure out what's going on here. And so he kind of, you know, does some investigation and fills out the thing. Yeah. Watching it, I was like, I don't know why people don't like this movie. It's great. It must be because the theatrical release really truncated it somehow.
30 minutes is a significant amount of time.
Like over 30 minutes of like more story made that movie incredibly better. It's not perfect, but it's definitely good. Anyway, there's this great scene in that movie where what is he? Oh no, he's like waking up. He sleeps in like a sensory deprivation chamber. Basically, it looks like a Dracula coffin, right? It like slides open, and he gets out, and like he stands up, and you hear his knees like cricking and cracking, and he kind of stretches, and it shows a picture of his back, and it's all covered with scars and everything. And he kind of meanders over to the medicine cabinet, and it's just full of like prescription pill bottles, and he's just dumping one after another and taking all of these pain pills and stuff. It's like, that's Batman. When you think about what it must be to be like a regular dude getting in all these fights all the time, like that's the price you pay. And to me, I'm like, that's a cool like Batman moment, really. Like, I'm out here just giving it my all every night, getting beat up by these dudes, and I gotta get up and do it again.
Yeah. I obviously am way less knowledgeable about Daredevil, but I don't know that he's either of them. I agree. All three of them have the strain of tragedy fostering vigilantism, revenge. Right? Spider-Man, he's young, and in every iteration I've seen, once he gets past the thing about Uncle Ben, his drive changes, right? It's no longer, I don't get the hint from Spider-Man that he's continuing justice for the sake of Uncle Ben. He has to go through his own traumas, and now he's just, I'm going to use my powers for good.
Spider-Man is with great power comes great responsibility. Like,
right,
he has
exactly.
to do something with them to benefit the world. That's his core belief.
And with Batman, I get that he never lets go of being a vigilante. Like everything is driven by this dark past of his parents' murders and never heals or gets through it, or that he's just this dude who has all the disposal in the world and he just keeps doing because he wants to continuously do right by his parents. And I got neither of those from Daredevil. I'll say it the different way. I got both of those when reading Daredevil, because he becomes this lawyer and goes after the mob. That is continuation of avenging his father's murder. And also that just juxtaposition of being that vigilante and also fighting crime, but continuing to do so even though he has other means to go after the mob guys.
It's daddy issues on top of daddy issues for Daredevil, right? His dad wanted him to be a lawyer and use his brain to make the world a better place.
Right.
So he does that with all of his heart. But he always wanted to be like his dad, who was a big tough guy in the streets who beat people up. And so he does that with all of his heart as well.
Especially since when he was a kid, and at least in the 1980s one, he listens to his dad so much that he allows himself to get beat up instead of fighting back. Even though he could fight back and beat the pulp out of all these other kids, he takes his father's word to heed, and that continues as he's an adult and is in that superhero mode. It's very interesting. So let's go to a lighter question here. Which other superhero would Daredevil actually get along with? And we're going to say any superhero. Let's go any in the history of ever.
So there have been, of course, Marvel team-ups with Daredevil. We've seen Daredevil on the Fantastic Four. We've seen Daredevil and Spider-Man team-ups all the time. Deadpool always teams up with somebody, so there's that. Daredevil and Wolverine see who can like out growl each other, and so that kind of exists, but it kind of depends on which Daredevil you get. Like, you read Frank Miller Daredevil,
yes,
right?
Yeah,
and so that's a pretty like gritty, like we were talking about, singularly focused Daredevil. Daredevil can be smiley, right? Like, there's definitely in the early 60s ones when Daredevil was jumping off buildings and flipping around, he was laughing with a smile on his face because he was a daredevil, right? Ha 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 ha. Daredevil's jumping off the roof. Later, more recently, when Mark Waid took over the book, Daredevil again, like, we actually get to see happy Matt Murdock every once in a while in that, like, his law firm's doing good. He's got a girlfriend. He's living in San Francisco. Everything's like going well, but there's also like this crime he's got to deal with and stuff. And we'll still get the laughing Daredevil jumping off the roof. So it kind of depends, but overall, he's a very focused person.
Okay. So who would he get along with? Who do you think?
I just put on the question document, I just put the ladies.
The lady.
The lady. Who does Matt Murdock get along with? The ladies. He's a ladies' man. He's a lawyer. He's got, nice suits and fancy watches, and he definitely like uses his perceived handicap to his advantage when he goes and like flirts with all the girls. Like,
okay.
Matt Murdock is he's a ladies' man.
He's
he
a
gets out
player.
there. He's always single and he's always dating.
So you're saying he's LL Cool and ladies love Cool Matt.
Yes, ma'am.
You know that's what allegedly L Cool J stands for, right?
I did not.
Ladies love Cool James because his name is
Cool
James.
Well,
LL
ladies
Cool
love
J. LL Cool
Cool
J's real name is James.
Matt Murdock then. Yeah, that's that because he's either pining away for Elektra or when Elektra's out of the picture, he's just, like, oh, I've got this lawyer friend that I'm dating now. And oh, I met this client that I'm dating now. And then there's a lot of Daredevil that takes place in San Francisco when like things get too weird with him being in New York in a world full of Avengers and stuff. They'll just take him and put him in San Francisco. He loves being over there.
Whether the Avengers or not.
Exactly.
Okay. Fair.
So then it's like, oh, now I'm in San Francisco and I got ladies over here.
Yeah, I think my answer is much more simple because I've only like read a comic and a half about Daredevil, but I would say Superman because of values. I think they have some similar values in terms of their identity as a superhero, not their non-superhero identity. I think they're two different. But in terms of Daredevil, the superhero, I would say Superman.
I mean, especially early Superman, when you see, when Superman was going after slumlords and spousal abusers and things like that. Right. And he was just like, no, you're doing the wrong thing, and throws him into the sun or whatever dumb thing. Picks up his car and shakes him. Yeah.
How dare you? Let's see.
This is an interesting question as well. You said Matt Murdock, the defense attorney, versus Daredevil the Vigilante. Which one is actually serving justice? We talked about this a little bit, but this is the interesting part. Could either of them win against She-Hulk?
I'm going to say no, because I think in a fictional story that they are trying a case together against each other, I think Matt Murdock gets too blinded by his vigilantism to actually follow the law, whereas She-Hulk is like 100% narrowly down the path of whatever law they are citing or whatever. I think he would get too blinded by his purpose.
Yeah, no, we got the pun.
I didn't even mean it that way.
Sure you did it. You said it twice. I'm like, okay, Annalise, we get it.
I really did. Like, I am so punny, I didn't even know it. That's amazing. Good for me. I
think you're right. I think Jennifer Walters' She-Hulk is a much more like high-profile lawyer for sure. Interestingly, as the stories go, Stan Lee did have the idea that Matt Murdock would be a superhero lawyer, right? That, when the People versus Spider-Man would come up, he would be defending superheroes, right? And, a small claims court against Luke Cage because he flattened my tires when he threw my car across the street, whatever. That would be a Matt Murdock thing. But after the treatment that once Frank Miller kind of took over that character in the early 80s and in the late 80s when things were getting like really gritty, that went out the window. It was too silly for that character. And if you read those She-Hulk comics, they're hilarious. Like they're very much, oh, here's my client, Howard the Duck, and we're going to do the investigation. How do we do that? Go to the long boxes, and they go to the thing and they pull out comic books and like start reading them like, nope, look right here. He said, and it's very tongue in cheek and it's very like fourth wall breaking and stuff. And it's a good time, but it doesn't fit with the Daredevil motif as we know it today, thanks to Frank Miller and even Brian Michael Bendis and stuff like that. It just wouldn't fit. But yeah, I mean, Matt Murdock, yes, successful lawyer, but really like, a lot of that time he's working small cases in very small courtrooms in his neighborhood of Hell Kitchen. He's not in Manhattan doing gigantic lawyer things like She-Hulk does.
He would not be on the show Suits.
I don't think so. No, he would be on the show Daredevil starring Charlie Cox.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Wilson Fisk.
Yes.
A terrifying mob boss or surprisingly relatable entrepreneur. And what makes Kingpin such a unique foil for Matt is he's secretly one of Marvel's best well-written villains.
Yes, and Kingpin is not an entrepreneur. Kingpin is not a businessman. Kingpin is like, he literally is. I mean, the way I think about him, he is the mob boss. Like his whole thing is like, there is no company. Like there's no like Fisk Industries makes some kind of widget or whatever. It's like, no. He just owns a gigantic building and a penthouse office because he bought it with money from crime, right? His
industry is the mob. It doesn't have to be a legal business, but you can't be a kingpin of the mob without being entrepreneurial.
I guess so. It's all like, it's like personnel based industry, right? And that's what's so great about the Kingpin and Daredevil, because the Kingpin is above the law. The Kingpin is untouchable. The Kingpin has all this wealth and power and money, and you'll never get to him. There's so many layers of mini bosses between the guy who stole the purse or the person who's shaking down the small business owner and Kingpin that it's this constant struggle. Matt can't get to him in the courtroom because of legal loopholes and things. And Daredevil can't get to him in the streets because he does, but like he doesn't get his hands dirty. He's not going to be down in the streets doing the crime. He's always in his penthouse mansion.
Yeah, he's such a good villain that you don't see additional villains pop up for Daredevil, right? Like when you get Superman, you have Lex Luthor is great, but at some point Lex Luthor goes away and you get all these other characters that Superman faces. Same with Batman. Eventually there's just all these other guys. Obviously I've not read a lot of Daredevil, but it seems like it always circles back to Kingpin, no matter what.
I mean, yeah, that's going to be it. Daredevil definitely has a rogues gallery as well. There's Bullseye. There's all the hand ninjas. There's Elektra. There's Mole Man. There's the gamut of the street level tier villains in the Marvel universe go up against Daredevil. He certainly has his rogues gallery. But yeah, I mean, the good story, it's like Batman and Joker. Yeah, you could have a Batman versus Riddler story and you might be able to make it really good, but everybody's going to think about the Joker. Superman, everybody's going to think about Lex Luthor, right? Sure. There's other ones, but if you're going to tell the story, it's going to be a Kingpin story.
Yeah. But even still, some of the folks you mentioned are layers of Kingpin.
Absolutely.
Which you don't necessarily get in with the other superheroes. You might get it for a while with Lex Luthor because he also is somewhat of a mob boss, although it's hidden in an actual company, right? Some of them are layers of his doing, depending on which version of Batman you're following, of course. But yeah, he's just always there, and he hits every side of Matt Murdock's life, his life as well as his superhero's life, and that I thought was really interesting too.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you'll see is he might be fighting all of these other villains, but in the end, it's but he was working for this person. Oh, and that person works for this person, and that person works for the Kingpin.
And it's 6 degrees of separation. What is that? 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but it's 6 degrees of
Wilson
Kingpin.
Fisk. The character played in the show, Vincent D'Onofrio plays the Kingpin in the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now.
Great actor.
And absolutely incredible. Just very, very incredible. To the point, he's such a good actor. There are times during the show when you're watching him and he becomes a sympathetic character. Oh my gosh, this poor guy, he really just wants to, live in peace and all this stuff. And so then they'll have him do something just horrifying, just bare hand crush somebody's skull on panel or whatever. And you're oh no, he's a psychopath. That's right.
Well, let's talk about side characters since we're talking about, the rogue, you call it rogues gallery. In this case, how crucial are Foggy Nelson, Karen Page, and even Stick to Daredevil's humanity? Which one deserves a good or better story arc than they get?
So 2 parts of the question is, Daredevil storylines are always about his loss and or his guilt, right, that go along with that loss. So his mom, he lost his mom at a young age. I don't know how, but it was probably explained at some point. But
I don't remember it ever being.
He tragically loses his father. He tragically loses Elektra, even though she keeps coming back to life with magic ninja powers, but whatever. That's another person that dies and he loses. Karen Page, he loses on a couple of different fronts, right? In the main story, I think she moves away and becomes a porn star and then and a junkie, and then she comes back to be friends, but her drug addiction takes over and she sells out his identity for a hit of heroin. And
I did see a storyline about that where she's drug. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
And so he loses that friendship again, and then I think eventually she dies of AIDS, and so he loses her again. And then Foggy, sometimes they'll have these fights and Foggy will leave. This is a classic Daredevil thing, is I was trying to work on this case and you weren't here to help me because you were doing dumb Daredevil stuff and blah, 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 blah. I could do it on my own, and he'll leave. Or it's something where they'll disagree on, okay, we should defend this person. No, we're not going to do that. There's no money in it. They were probably guilty anyway, blah, 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 blah. No, it's really important we do this. Blah, blah, and they clash and Foggy leaves for a while. But Foggy always comes back. That's
the best friend always comes back.
The best friend always comes back. So Foggy is kind of that very crucial character of Foggy and Matt are on the rocks again, but they'll always come back and make up in that interesting best friend marriage between them. So I guess who needs a better storyline is probably Karen Page. I think they're doing, they attempted to do a much better job making her a more well-rounded character in the show that's going in the Charlie Cox show. She's definitely not, in the comics, she goes from kind of like blonde ditzy secretary to blonde ditzy, I want to be an actor in Hollywood, to blonde ditzy, I got sucked into the porn industry and now I'm hooked on heroin. And
so wild.
Yeah, just kind of like bouncing around, like, a very tragic character. But I think in the show, it's like, oh no, Karen Page works at this law firm. She's actually like a really smart person who has her head on her shoulders and, does the right thing. They develop that person into not, oh yeah, I used to get Foggy Nelson coffee and now I'm addicted to drugs, to like, no, I'm a paralegal and I know
right
my stuff, right?
Well, the first part of the question for me, I think Foggy helps connect his humanity a little bit better because, and again, the very limited that I've read, when he meets Foggy, they're college roommates, and Foggy is being bullied, just like Matt Murdock was as a kid. And so he uses his skills, sort of. I don't think he really at first shows Foggy what he's capable of, but shows his skills to help Foggy not be bullied anymore and help Foggy grow as a person. And then they grow together. And I think for me, I read that as helping to continue to ground Matt Murdock in his humanity, where he could have just went full vigilante at some point. But now he has a purpose of finishing his law degree and becoming a lawyer and doing all those things because of his friendship with Foggy. Yeah, and Karen Page gets really messy. I do remember reading that, even though it's not as evident in the comic I read. But yeah, I think Foggy helps connect as a young adult into adulthood, helps connect and ground his humanity. I would love to see a story arc. What does Foggy do when he goes away? When they are not friends, right? It makes me think of, like, I don't know if you've taken the time to see Ted Lasso yet, but there are definitely episodes that take one of the side characters and you spend that episode with them. And some of the really great television that was written allows for that to happen, right? You get Buffy the Vampire Slayer and you get the episode that is Xander-centric, and you get this Xander-centric episode. You get this Ted Lasso, his co-coach Beard. There's this whole episode called Beard's Night Out, and it's weird. And it's just a great episode, and it actually pulls in a lot of the storylines to get to the end of the series. But imagine an episode that we get, Foggy Bueller's Day Off kind of deal and get to know more about him. I mean,
60 years of comics. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something out there, or at least those good maybe. Foggy stories. So if there's listeners who are big Daredevil fans and you want to recommend, your favorite Foggy Nelson stories, please write in to podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. I'll shout out a Foggy Nelson strip.
I'll read a Foggy Nelson centric deal. Let us know. Let me know. I'm new to all of this. Anything else you want to say about Daredevil, Rob?
How much I enjoyed refamiliarizing myself with Daredevil over this last week, reading through these books, watching the movie again, thinking about, all the things that you love about that character, which really is, like we've been harping on, like he fights for justice, in his career and in his vigilante thing, and like how unique of a character that makes him outside of all of the weird ninja stuff and magic and, whatever, like that core. Obviously, like you can keep telling stories with that over and over and over again, and they're very interesting.
Well, I appreciated learning everything about Daredevil since I knew nothing about Daredevil, and I want to honor the fact that everyone's talking about the show and how good it is, including Dr. Intern Jones. So that's on my list to start watching and maybe catch up before the next season comes out, because it sounds like it's pretty phenomenal.
I would be shocked if you don't come away loving it.
Sounds like it, especially some of the horror tropes that Dr. Intern Jones talked about before. So
very cool.
We're going to check it out.
All right.
We're back at it for another week, Rob. What's the nerdiest thing you did this week?
So, nerdiest thing that I did this week is I'm finally, as I go through my list, months and months ago when we did the Superman episode, I had asked about the character The Engineer. And one of our listeners wrote in with the recommendation that The Engineer is a Warren Ellis character from the storyline of Stormwatch, which I was not familiar with. I hadn't read Stormwatch. I know a little bit about Warren Ellis as far as like, oh yeah, that's that guy that has the like hyper violent, silly violent comic books with like people's eyeballs flying out towards the reader and stuff like that. So I finally got around to it and I've been giving it a try, and I've been going through Stormwatch Volume 1, which is 12 issues long, I think. And I think I'm either on like 7 or 8, sticking through it, starting to get to know the characters and the different, like the setup of Stormwatch, which is very interesting. So it's a superhero group that works for the United Nations. So they have a satellite around the world, which is their headquarters, and they take superheroes from all these different countries to represent the interests of the United Nations. And they have different teams like within that the guy will send to, depending on the situation, right? Like, oh, we need to like deter tanks, send, the blue group down because they're like big superhero strong people. Oh, we need to do something sneaky and espionage. Oh, send Team Black. And that's a different group of characters and like those kinds of things. So it's kind of interesting, but it's definitely Warren Ellis. Like, I think just last night there was a dude who, they slammed his car into the ground and he came walking out with like the steering column stuck out of his back all bloody and stuff. Like, it's very
That's definitely not Rob Cooper-esque.
But it was listener Ish who recommended. He's like, hey, yeah, if you want to learn about the Engineer, read the Stormwatch book. Like I said, I'm 7 or 8 issues into this thing. There ain't no Engineer in this book, Ish. Yeah, this character's not in here. Maybe they'll show up, but we shall see.
No. Well, I hope so, because Engineer is such an interesting character in the new Superman. Like, so I hope you can report back at some point when the Engineer pops up. And if not, then Ish just got him.
He's like, it'll be great.
Making you read this stuff
by making him read this Warren Ellis book. Got him. Oh, Analese, what's the nerdiest thing you did this week?
Well, in my true fashion, it's October, so everything's horror, and Netflix's newest version of their series, Monster, came out, and we've been maybe not watching it. Like, reviews haven't been great, and it's apparently pretty gory, or we know now because I've now watched it, but I have watched the Ed Gein Story. So this is the 3rd installment of this Monsters series from Netflix. The first one was Jeff Dahmer, which I thought was just brilliant. Evan Peters, just brilliant. The second one was the Menendez brothers story, which also was very, very good. We were children, maybe adolescents, not quite teenagers, when all of that happened. So it was interesting to look back at 30 years ago. This one, Ed Gein, I admittedly didn't know a lot about, and it is hard to watch. It is so gory, it is hard to watch. What I found interesting, and I didn't know about Ed Gein's story, which I recommend that you, my best friend, don't look it up because it's nothing that you would ever want to see.
No problem.
But this guy, Ed Gein, who was a serial killer / a whole bunch of other human atrocities in the 50s, he is the inspiration behind Psycho. He's the inspiration behind Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's the inspiration behind Silence of the Lambs, and a whole bunch of my favorites in the horror genre are loosely based off of this guy's life. And I don't know why I've never paid attention to his story before. I'm glad I haven't, because it's gnarly. I mean, this dude was, with all the issues we can now name, schizophrenia and religious abuse at the hands of his mother. I'd be interested to know if Stephen King based the character of Carrie's mother in Carrie based off of Ed Gein's mother. But things you know from the movie Psycho are what this dude did. Things you know from the movie, from Leatherface and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, are exactly what this dude did. Like he would find, well, and there was a woman in his life that it's questionable whether they were actually romantically involved or not, but she would bring him magazines and pictures she would find from the Holocaust, and it gruesomely inspired him to like make lampshades out of human skin.
What the heck are you talking about, Analese?
Gnarly. It's gnarly. And I knew nothing about his story. We started watching it, and like we had to watch it slowly and like, let's stop this for a little bit. And so I like this series that Netflix is doing. I know people have had issues, like the Jeff Dahmer, the families of the victims? Are they making money off of the stories of the families of the victims? I thought Netflix did a really good job actually highlighting the victims instead of Jeff Dahmer himself. They actually highlighted the story in that series about how he was able to continue to get away with his murders because he was a white man in Wisconsin. And when he was caught with these young non-white boys, police kind of just backed off and said, we're not touching this gay thing. You say this kid's 18, we believe you. Jeff Dahmer could have been caught 4, 5, 6 times before his body count got as high as it did. With the Menendez brothers, it calls into question whether or not they were abused at the hands of their father, and that the result is that they killed their parents. And in this one, I don't know what their purpose is. It reminds me a little bit of, I doubt you ever watched American Horror Story.
Nope.
First 3 or 4 seasons are brilliant. And then they get to a season where I think a season is titled Hotel. And I watched maybe the first 2 episodes of that. And it really just felt like, how much grotesqueness are you trying to fit into this show? Because I can't watch this. And I stopped watching American Horror Story other than Coven. When they did Coven a couple seasons later, I went back and watched it. But like this series, Monster, the Ed Gein Story, really sounds like they're trying to push the envelope of how gory they can get. And we haven't finished it yet, but that's what I've been doing. I've been nerding out about the Ed Gein Story and learning a lot. To its credit, Rob, what is really interesting is they're pulling in scenes of Alfred Hitchcock and Anthony Perkins in the making of Psycho and talking about how Ed Gein inspired how Hitchcock made this movie, because it was a novel, and the novelist based this novel a little bit off of Ed Gein's story. But one thing we don't realize is how Alfred Hitchcock changed how we watched films.
Sure. I mean, that's
with Psycho,
yeah,
right?
You can take classes
and
on that.
Yes. And one of the biggest ones, which I really wasn't aware of, but they talk about how at the time movies would just play on a loop. And you pay your like 20 cents or whatever it was to go to a movie, and you just show up whenever. And if you're there in the middle of the movie, you watch the end and you can sit there and they're going to restart it and you can watch it from the beginning, and you want to sit there and watch it 3 times, it doesn't matter.
Like TV?
Yes. And when they released Psycho, he told all of the movie theaters across the country, the only way you can show this is if you lock the doors when the movie starts. And if people don't show up, they cannot go in. And that's what we know. Like, to this day, you have shows start times now. They don't lock the doors. They'll let you in if you come in.
No, because people died in fires.
But yeah, like he changed the way we see movies with Psycho. Really interesting to see scenes of how they filmed Texas Chainsaw Massacre and how those guys wrote that script based around what they knew about Ed Gein. And we haven't gone far enough to see with Silence of the Lambs, but we've started to see some scenes that you can tell created Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. So it's been interesting, but I've been nerding out over Monsters, the Ed Gein Story. Don't watch it. You, my best friend. Other people, you like horror genre, watch it. But Rob, my best friend, don't watch it.
Here's a fun Halloween recommendation. I'm always big on using your library card, especially with Hoopla. I think that's one of the coolest things that the internet has brought us is your digital library with your library card. And Hoopla, in October, they're doing, on their comic book page, they've got everything set up. All of the old Creepshow comics from back in the day are all organized and cataloged there, and they're highlighting that. Now that's a fun time for your Halloween.
Creepshow is an amazing comic. Tales from the Crypt is an amazing comic. All of those really good ones. October's not just all scary, gory stuff. I always make sure we watch Hocus Pocus and Practical Magic and The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. There's other fun things too. But that's not what I did this week. The only thing I did this week was get kind of grossed out by the Ed Gein Story. Next week on Nerd Best Friends, we will be nerding out with author Brick Marlin, his newest novel, and all other things good and nerdy. Before you go, hit that follow or subscribe button. Drop us a 5-star rating if you're feeling the nerd love. Find us on social media at NerdBestFriends or email us, podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. Help us grow the nerd herd and keep the geeky goodness rolling. That's Daredevil, Rob.
It's Daredevil. I enjoyed it very much. And now we know, if anything, Daredevil is a boy.
One of the most important things to know. It is not
Daredevil
Elektra.
is not Elektra.
Daredevil is not Jennifer Garner, or maybe he should be.
Maybe he should be.
On a future episode of Nerd Best Friends. All right, nerds, we'll see you next time. One of these days when we go live, we're just going to keep counting it down like it's Wayne's World. And no one's going to get it. It's going to be amazing.
People might get it.
Only the cool nerds will get it.
That's right.